Now for the EFD, Mr. Bloom.
Good evening, Monsieur Barnier. I wonder if you can perhaps put my mind a little bit at rest. At the risk again of being rather parochial, I am talking here on behalf of the financial service industry of the City of London. Monday evening I heard that Mr. Wren simply had no idea how the subprime crisis came about, which disappointed me. Tuesday night I listened to the new Commissioner for Competition, who's a self-confessed Marxist, and I've been listening to you, sir, now talking about derivatives and commodity trading, which leads me to believe you clearly don't really have a great grip of this subject. What really worries me is that can you please explain to me, when you're talking about dealing with commodities and you're dealing with short trading, that you're not just going to simply drive it back to Chicago or into Zurich where it's already going. I'm not at all comfortable about the way this whole thing is going, and if you remember that 40% of UK GDP comes from financial services in the City of London. Don't kill the goose that lays the golden egg.
Non, mais Monsieur Bloom n'a pas posé de vraies questions.
Well, Mr. Bloom didn't really raise a question, but he did express a conviction, and that's his right. His right to use his time in that way. I also have figures on the importance of the city. I was a bit surprised by what you said, if the translation was correct, that you were talking on behalf of the financial services.
Je pense que vous parlez au nom de vos électeurs.
I presume you're speaking on behalf of your voters.
Parmi lesquels il y a probablement.
And among them, no doubt, there are many people who are in high managerial posts. And Mr. Bloom is right in one sense. He's right to remind us that for a significant capital, for London, for the United Kingdom, the financial sector is very important. It's considerable in terms of importance. We're talking across Europe too of millions of jobs, 5 or 6 million jobs I think linked to that sector in the European economy, millions of people who work and earn a living for their families. So Mr. Bloom is right. For one country, for one capital, it's a very important sector, the financial services sector, so we do need to be very careful about that, and I will be very careful about that. Now, of course, it's not for me to simply say anything to please you, Mr. Bloom, but I don't think it's within the interests of the British financial sector, which is a sector we need, not just for the UK, but for Europe as a whole, for reasons I've said. It's not in the interests of that sector to continue to appeal to public funds, to taxpayers, to make a contribution, as you have done in the UK. You've had to appeal to taxpayers to put right the consequences of a crisis which we hadn't really foreseen, which we hadn't anticipated because of a lack of transparency and a lack of supervision. This is 600,000 billion euros, which is going round the world, linked to derivatives. It's a market that we have to control.
Donc, nous avons besoin, Monsieur Bloom, de.
So, Mr. Bloom, we need regulation. I'm tempted to quote Adam Smith in response to Mr. Bloom, the founding father of neoliberalism. The market cannot work without rules and cannot work without ethics among those involved in it, and that's what I believe.
The point I was making, Mr. Barnier, and I thank you for that, was I make no apology for representing the City of London's financial service industry here in this committee. None whatsoever. Without it, the United Kingdom would be bankrupt, and I feel very strongly about it, and I spent 38 years in the city. And I agree that we need regulation. I understand the comment, the quotation of Madam Smith. What we've had is the wrong sort of regulation. It hasn't been light regulation. It's been extremely heavy. It's been the wrong sort of regulation, and it's extremely expensive, and it's failed. What I'm concerned about is we do not appear to have learnt anything from this, because we're saying what we want is more of the same regulation, more and more of the same, which has failed. Other parts of the world, like Australia, have not suffered from this problem because they have a completely different sort of regulation. So could you assure me that we will look to other systems of regulation, not the totally prescriptive system that we've had in the past, which has caused this appalling crisis?
Monsieur Bloom, il n'y a pas besoin de...
Well, Mr. Bloom, I don't think we need to look for examples in Australia. It's rather far off. We didn't invent this crisis. I said a moment ago that we're not going to pretend to reform. We are going to reform because the crisis wasn't a pretend crisis. It didn't pretend to destroy hundreds of thousands of jobs, and it's not over either when it comes to the real economy and to manufacturing industry. So, once again, I think that you need to reconsider the opinion I mentioned a moment ago. It's in the interest of the European financial sector and the British financial sector to be regulated properly and effectively. And vis-à-vis the other regions of the world, we will have a sustainable competitive advantage. I have an article here from an author you may know well, who knows the city well, Lord Turner, who said that the city hasn't learnt the lessons of the crisis. We have to learn the lessons from the crisis, and we will do.